Stress and trauma, are they the same? Well, they are kinda. It depends when. It's a blurry line. Raquel Devillé is a therapist from Belgium, and she's going to help us separate what the difference is between stress and trauma. And Raquel, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andre. Thank you for inviting me to be here again.
No problem. And you have a background in stress and trauma, especially with neurodivergent people, and you're a therapist in Belgium as well, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Now, for me, I've had a very recent I've really been interested in stress and trauma because, realizing a lot of I'm going through, listeners know I'm working with a therapist with the internal family systems and we're dealing with my exiles and my managers and firefighters. So I really want to get a little more deeper with stress and trauma. And you said that stress and trauma, what is stress and what is trauma? Let's start there.
So stress is your response to something, okay? Something outside. So there's something outside that creates stress and your body will respond to it. It's the body's response to pressure or demand. So it can be work deadlines, financial worries. It can be also school problems, bullying, sometimes an accident like a car accident that so and your body will respond to it. And trauma, it's how your nervous system responds to the overwhelming experiences. So basically, stress is created by some event and your body responds to it. And trauma, it's how it gets stuck in your body. Or am I making sense? So sometimes it's not completed and it creates a trauma. So it's how you perceive this stressful event. I don't know if I'm making sense. Basically, stress is something that happens in life, in everyday life, and your body will respond to this stress, like facing it. So it's a response of the body. So you have, let's imagine, a lion in front of you, and your body will respond to this lion. So you can either fight the lion, run away from the lion, or just froze in front of the lion because your nervous system estimates that you will risk your life more if you are going to fight it or if you are going to run away from it. So you just freeze.
And it's an external factor, stress.
Exactly. So this is how your body responds. It's your body response to stress. Trauma, it's when it's your nervous system responds to overwhelming experiences that exceeds your ability to cope. So when you cannot cope, then there's trauma. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I'd like you to repeat that again for the listeners as well. So the trauma is a nervous system reaction to overwhelming
experiences that exceeds your ability to cope. So you have a stress, your body responds to the stress, you face the stress, you make whatever you need to deal with the stress, and then life goes on as normal. Okay, so you had that experience, a stressful experience, and life goes on. However, sometimes this stress can be an overwhelming experience and it can exceed your ability to cope with it. And then trauma is created.
Oh, if there's too much stress or recurring stress.
Exactly. So there's a blurring line when chronic stress becomes traumatic or when past trauma, for example, creates ongoing stress. So they are very much like.
And that's the blurry line.
Exactly.
Okay. So I got a couple more questions. So stress is a body reaction to an external factor that we can cope with quickly and life moves on.
Exactly. So stress, it's the body's response to whatever happens.
Yeah. And then trauma is the nervous system reaction to overwhelming experiences that exceeds our ability to cope. So that's really interesting to me because stress is body related and trauma is nervous system. So trauma is how you cope with it or you don't.
So usually it's when you don't so well. So that's why it becomes trauma, okay? Because you don't cope, because it was. So, and then you have different kinds of stress and different.
Yeah, let's go through that list. What are the different types of stress?
So this is a short list, okay? So you have acute stress, so it's short-term stress, chronic, so long-term, and acute episodic stress, so frequent acute stress.
Right.
And trauma, you have names that are much the same, so much like, so acute as well, single incident, complex, so when it's repeated and prolonged.
Okay.
Developmental, I always get stuck with this word, so it's childhood trauma. And you also have generational.
Oh, you're talking about trauma now. Gotcha. Yep.
Passed through families, okay? And yeah, so when this stress, it's too much to cope with, then it becomes trauma.
So we got the three types of stress: was acute, episodic, and chronic.
Yeah.
And then if that goes on too long, and we can have different types of trauma develop, which would be acute trauma, developmental, complex, PTSD or post-traumatic syndrome difference, complex PTSD, and intergenerational trauma.
Exactly.
Right? So how does... Now, the intergenerational one is very interesting to me. So intergenerational meaning something that happened to my family lineage centuries ago, I can feel that trauma and I'm born with it? Is that one way to put it? Or I keep hearing this term, intergenerational trauma.
You have the psychological and emotional impacts that are passed from one generation to the other. Then you also have the one that is originated by traumatic collective experiences. So like historical or, well, individual, like family. I'm going to give you examples because sometimes it's easier. So you have like historical trauma. So like people that descendants from war survivors or from generations that come after slavery. Also kids of war refugees or families that were removed from their place of origin. Also people that survived colonization.
Yep.
Also communities that are marginalized. This is examples of traumatic collective experiences or even family ones, but related to more historical events or groups. And then you have family trauma, like when there are like kind of destructive secrets, family secrets, like hidden adoptions or kids that outside marriage that are not recognized by one of the parents. Also violence, schemes of violence, of domestic violence from generation to another. Also addiction problems that can pass on from
Right.
and so on. So, but this is much like physical aspect that passes from one generation to the other, trauma as well, but also some adaptive responses, for example, they can also pass, and also some ways of doing things. So in French is savoir-faire, in English I'll let you translate because
what was the French term again?
Savoir-faire. It's to know how to do something. For example, this knowledge that passes from one generation to the other because there's a family that always had that kind of activity and then it keeps going from one generation to the other.
Right. And it's not necessarily taught, it's just the adaptive practices to overcome the trauma back then.
Not necessarily so related to trauma. So I have a very good example of this. I know this person that works in finance, and it has been for generations that his family works in finance. So there's like a family picture of different generations, and he has in his office different portraits of different members of the family that all worked in finance. So it's something that has been moving on. My family, for example, it was very related with sewing and producing linen and very textile. So
Hmm.
I do have a textile thing, so I'm very at ease with all things textile. From even not knowing how to do it, I learn really fast, and then I'm really good at it. Also, my daughter, she learned how to crochet perfectly, really fast, like from nothing to perfect, very
Right.
regular. So it's kind of savoir-faire that passes from one generation to the other.
Is that genetic as well, or just more an environment and what's always been known and just gets transferred subconsciously?
So in the beginning, there's someone that has to learn something, to do something, and then this one will show to others like how it's done, and then the others will teach others. So there's an experiment with monkeys, I think it's called the 100 monkey experience or something like this. So there is this first monkey that one day breaks a coconut,
Hmm.
and then realizes that there's a whole thing inside that fruit that can be eaten, and so there's water,
Right.
there's the fruit in itself. So this monkey teaches other monkeys to uh,
To
to
break
break
the coconut.
the coconut, and then they have kids, and so kids learn, and then they learn, and the 100 monkey, that one knows already, so it's
It
already
doesn't have to be taught.
an adaptive response that
Huh.
so it's already inside, so doesn't need to learn, doesn't need no one, anybody
Hmm.
show, does it naturally. So
So yeah, go ahead.
so this passes from one generation to the other. Trauma as well as sometimes an adaptive response, for example.
Right. So your examples are not necessarily trauma or stress related, but they're just examples how stress and trauma can be transferred generationally and through the
Because now
family.
trauma can be transferred. Now
Yeah.
we know, so we know there are experiences. Peter
So
Levine, I think in his last book, yeah.
so how do I know if I'm suffering from intergenerational trauma or stress? If technically we don't know about it.
So it can be related to blocks that you might have, or sometimes unexplicable emotions, for example, can be related to that. And sometimes even the way you do things, it can be related to it as well.
What kind of therapy do you recommend? Or actually, let me rephrase this. You specialize in somatic therapy, and that's where you're listening to your body
A lot.
a lot.
I also use family
Internal family systems.
systemic family constellations, but
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
use it with
yeah.
somatic experiencing.
Okay.
So
So
when I
what
do,
is somatic therapy? How do you use that, and how does that help us with stress and trauma? I'm really curious about the somatic part.
okay, so I'm going to talk about Peter Levine. Peter Levine explains so many things. You can read
So
it.
Peter Levine's the guy who started the somatic therapy practice?
Somatic experiencing, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
He's really brilliant. So he has many books that are all of them with audio, so it's not even difficult to listen to. And
Hmm.
explain. So he has one about traumatic memory. And then I think it's in his last book that he talks about transgenerational trauma. Ah, look, I said
Okay.
without getting stuck. So basically, traumatic memory, it's implicit. So it's not something that you necessarily remember. So you had a
Okay.
stress, you might remember the stress or not, but the traumatic memory, it's something that it's inside your body. So sometimes you can know that that happened, but you have some kind of blockage that you don't really understand why. And it's
Hmm.
something inside your body that got stuck and it's implicit, so you don't remember it. It's like procedural memory, like riding a bike. So it becomes automatic, walking as well. So you learn how to walk, and then it's automatic. So you won't waste energy. Riding bicycle.
Yeah.
So traumatic memory, it's something that it's in your body, that affects the way you do things or don't, and it's kind of automatic and it's implicit. So you cannot remember it, and you don't have access to it cognitively, in a cognitive.
Cognitively, I was going to say that it's not a cognitive memory, it's in the body.
Exactly. So if you want to resolve it, then you have to go through the body to unstuck it.
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
No, it is like that makes. I think you said if trauma is about the nervous system reaction, then it has to be body related,
Yeah,
deep body.
exactly. And so it gets stuck in the body, and then it has to get unstuck from the
So
body.
is somatic therapy more about working with trauma, or is it can you do it with stress, or is it a mix of the two?
So basically, I use different techniques, some more to stress and some more to trauma, but I tend to mix them all.
Okay. Well, it's common with therapists. Not one does it all, and it all depends on the patient as well. Can you give us a couple of examples of some practices you may go through with somatic therapy to try to identify this trauma or to control our reactions?
So I'm not really control reaction. It's not really my thing.
Okay. Or identifying the trauma or what to work with.
Basically, so for stress, I use, for example, TRE, because you can really release stress with this tremoring response, that it's a natural response of the body. And
that's what TRE is, tremoring response?
TRE, it's trauma, tension and trauma release exercises.
Okay.
So basically, this tremor, it's a natural reaction of the body. So when you have a stress and your body freezes or fawns, or so you don't have this very intense movement or either fighting or fleeing, so you just freeze. If you were in nature, once the danger it's gone, then the body would tremor.
Oh,
so it releases all the chemicals and tension that were produced by your body to face the stress and that were not used with this freeze response, for example. So then it tremors. So with TRE, you are going to induce these tremors using exercises. With somatic experiencing, you are going to complete stress responses that were not complete at the moment you leave the stress. So, and it allows you to complete and then to resolve trauma. So,
okay.
and it can be done using different things, but it's always often related with movement. So often it's a movement that will be done. But sometimes this movement, it's not so easy, so you have to work differently. But there are different things that can be done in somatic experiencing. It's very powerful. It looks very simple and really, it's very gentle as a technique. It's very, very gentle and it's so powerful. It's crazy. And then there are other techniques like brain spotting also. So it's with the eyes, and family constellations or internal family system.
Right.
There are different approaches to transgenerational trauma as well.
Wow. Well, this is really, really great information. In our past conversation, you were talking about how neurodivergent people are disconnected from their body, and the somatic therapy or somatic feeling will help connect us back. I really like how stress is a reaction to something. Sorry, let me start over. Stress is a body reaction to something that's external from us, and it's a one shot, usually we can get over it, move on with life. And this is the one that really got me. The trauma is the nervous system reaction to overwhelming experiences exceeding our ability to cope. And that has a lot to do with traumatic memory, which is not conscious. It's just remembered in the body, in the nervous system.
Nervous system, it's also with stress. So, and the trauma
Agreed.
also includes the whole body. So I'm sorry, I kind of separated, but it's not separated. So that's the body.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the
I know.
stress is it's still done by the body, but it's more on the surface, while the trauma nervous is more in deeper
No,
inside. No?
not really. So from what I see, what happens, trauma basically when you complete the stress response. So when you have the stress, there's something external. Your body has a response to this stress, and then this response is completed. And then life goes on without trauma because this response was completed. So you can remember the stressful event. It can even be a traumatic event. But maybe as you coped with the situation and you completed the stress response cycle, you can move on. However, sometimes this stress cycle response, it's not completed, so it gets stuck somewhere, and then trauma occurs. So
Oh, okay.
there was a overwhelm. You couldn't cope with it. Your body could not respond somehow to the situation, and then it got stuck in the body as an unfinished.
Unfinished business.
Yeah,
So the
exactly.
body absorbs it.
So exactly. So what we do, for example, with somatic experiencing is going to complete this cycle of unfinished response, resolving the trauma. And sometimes you don't even know what the trauma is, but there's some kind of body reaction.
Right. So a trauma could be one massive stressful event, one time, or multiple stresses of the same type of stress that we've never really figured out or dealt with to release us. I think that's making sense for me. That if the stress cycle is not completed, we can keep burying. We don't want to deal with the stress or the outcome, so we'll just bury it and keep it inside, and that becomes trauma because we just keep piloting in our bodies.
So let me try to give examples to see if I can make sense, because
No, I think you're making sense. But now that we added in the stress cycle, is like we got a stressful event. If we're able to deal with the whole cycle, then it goes away. And that's how we deal with our trauma as well, is if we can complete those past cycles that we never completed.
So, but for example, as stress, you have different kinds of stress. So, for example, your computer crashes. That's a stress. And if it crashes after, just before like an important deadline, then it's really stressful. Okay. This is like one stressful event. And then you can also have, I don't know, the stress of working like many different projects, or like meetings and notifications while you're working. And this is a lot of stress. Okay. And with time, these can become chronic stress. For example, if you are constantly in your work, you have a lot of stress, and you have like different colleagues always asking you things, and you have different projects, and then you have lots of meetings, and then online meetings, and then notifications, and then your superior comes to you and there is a problem with this, and you are always in distress, and you cannot ever like either fight or flight. So there's no movement. So your body gets ready to do a very intense movement, either of fighting or fleeing. Okay. Fight or flight. But you freeze, you stay in this freeze state of not being able to do either, but you get stuck there. There's no movement. So there's no release of all the hormones and chemicals that were released in the body. And there's no release of all this tension. Okay. Can this be traumatic? Yes, it can become traumatic. So it can become chronic stress if you are exposed to this every day, like for weeks and months and sometimes years. And then your body will start to show. And this can become a kind of trauma. So if for example, if you have like a superior that is always coming to you like nasty, and this person is nasty, and it's kind of harassing you. So
Yep.
harassment, it's traumatic.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if it keeps going, then it becomes trauma. So this is a kind of trauma. So it becomes trauma. Am I making sense? So you cannot do a movement because you are stuck in the
Big
office.
clarification for me. Yep. And I like that. Like, stress is a body reaction. Chronic stress becomes trauma, and that traumatic memory is inside your body, and it's not a cognitive
Andrea?
memory. And that's a really big one. And then the stress cycle, we got to complete the stress cycle to deal with our trauma and stress, which I think is fantastic to know. And all I wanted for the listeners to understand today is the difference between being stressed or triggered is key to properly determining our next step. And triggering has most likely to do with trauma as well as stress. So for you, the listener, is it time for you to monitor your stress and triggers? And I think you do. And I think there's a difference between the two, which is very important to know. So thanks for joining us. And to you, the listeners, thanks for learning with me. We'll talk to you soon.